That I'm going to demonstrate is how to create a database connection using JSP program as well as Servlet program. In a simple example called as login example, I'm going to use both Servlet program as well as JSP program to show you the jdbc connection. For this purpose, I have framed an example. Look at this example. Before we get into the code and before we execute the program, let me show you roughly how each program works. Look at here. This is the simple form that is developed using HTML. There are only two fields, email ID as well as password. That means ID, I'll take just name. I didn't create any regular expression to check properly the email ID, nothing like that. Okay, so a simple login screen where there will be a username as well as password. Upon pressing the login button or submit button, both the details, that means name as well as password, will be submitted to a Sql program. This is a Sql program that I have written. Checklogin Sql program. It's a simple Java program that collects these two parameters. And here, what I do is that now I need to check. Using this program, I need to check whether the password that is provided by this user is correct or not. To do this, I have established a connection to database. Because in database, I have a table called as login users. That table has all entries that are related to passwords, usernames, passwords. So whomever the user that who have given the password, for that particular user, I'll just extract the password from the database table by writing a SQL query. I'll just execute a SQL query inside this Java program. So your Sql program is written in such a way, it establishes connection to the database using get connection method, the routine steps, and one important point. In case if you haven't seen the video of jdbc connecting to MySQL, make sure that you follow that video. That's very important. You need to know how connection has to be established. As part of this video, I'm not going to demonstrate what are the points that I have covered in my previous video. That was a video which is exclusively done to establish connection from Java to MySQL. Now using this Java program, that means Servlet program, I'll create the connection using get connection method. Once after the connection is established, there is a table called as login users. From there, I'll extract only the password from the username. For the username, whomever have provided that username. For an example, if user is ABC and password is 123 which was provided, to check 123 password is correct or not, I'll just execute an SQL query by establishing a connection. The SQL query executes in the database. SQL is a language that is used to communicate with databases. So it has to execute in the database itself. So the SQL will be executed inside the database and extracts the password and gives back the Sql program. So what is the password? It is 123 or 1234. What is the password? I'll just check it out using Java conditioning. And in case if password is correct, then what I do is that immediately my request will be dispatched. I'll be using a request dispatcher concept here. I'll just whatever the response that I got at this particular point, I'll just forward that response. Here I'll be redirected to a page called as welcome.jsp. In welcome.jsp, I'll get the name. For an example, if name of the person is ABC who have successfully logged in, I'll just show the message that you have logged in. Not only that, I wanted to show the personal details of that particular user. Just imagine that after providing your email name and password, a login page will be open for you. For an example, Gmail or Yahoo, a login page will be open by showing your personal details. In the same way, I would like to display some personal details of the user after logging. So for that reason, I have created one small table like personal details where there will be email ID, phone number of the user and name of the user, just only 3 entries. I'll try to extract those 3 details of the person who have logged in. I'll just show in a tabular format. Only if user has successfully logged in. In case if password is not correct, then a page will be loaded by showing an error message. Sorry, your password is incorrect. And I'll try to load the same response, whatever. I'll just load this page, .html page, whatever I have created. Whatever the page that is used to login, the same page will be loaded. It is much more like the example that we have seen earlier, request dispatcher. But at that time, we did not make connection to the database, but this time we are making the database connection. Okay, that makes a difference. And here notice that this is a Sql program because the entire thing should be in Java statements. So it's better not to write this program using JSP. It's always better to write using Java because I need to collect the inputs, I need to make a conditioning and everything. The more Java we do here, and there is no HTML involvement. That's why it's better to write this program using Solid program. And this is Solid program which is interacting with the database. And once after the successful credential, once after checking the credentials, once after logging successfully, here we have written a welcome.jsp page. Once after logging it, based on the username, I'm extracting the details of that user only. It means that even this welcome.jsp is interacting with the database. So in a single example, you will come across how Solid can interact with the database, how JSP can interact with the database. That's it. Come on, let's do it. 3 programs have to be written, one .html file and another .java file to check the conditioning, and one JSP file. 3 programs, okay? A total of 3 programs have to be written. And here is the Apache NetBeans. I'll show the services. My database is up and running. I told you in my previous video, I have elaborately told you how to create a database connection and how to write a simple Java program interacting with MySQL databases. I hope you have followed it. And here my database is already running. The name of the database is test. I created a test database in which there are some tables. These 2 tables I am going to use. One is users, login users. I have 2 fields, name and password, just 2 fields. And once after successful login, I need to extract the personal details. To do that, I'll use this table, personal details. Inside personal details, I have name, email ID and mobile number, only 3 fields. Once after understanding this example, you can frame this example as in the way you want. This is just to show you, the point here is that just to show you how to create database connection using Solid program and using JSP program. That's all. As I said, we need to create 3 files. One is .html file, that is login form.html file. And here there will be 2 fields. One is name as well as password. To this input field, the name is given as name, and for the password, the name is given as pwd. So in Solid program, I'll collect these 2 parameters using the name and pwd. Using these names, I'll be collecting the parameters. Once after acquiring the parameters, I'll start establishing the database connection. And once after the database connection is correct, then I'll check the conditioning. Whenever I press the submit button, once after providing the username and password, I'll be redirected to a Solid program called as Checklogin. What is that one? Checklogin. Checklogin is a Solid class now. We'll see the code for checklogin.java file. These programs are already created. So in your case, you need to write these programs. Here, after importing what are the packages that are required for establishing connection, for Solid statements, what are the packages that are required? Routine steps. You import them. And here is a place where I'm collecting the parameters provided by the user from the login page. Name and password. The name will be stored in a string called as name. pwd, that means password that is provided by the user, will be stored in a variable called as pwd. To avoid conflict, I just have given the same names. And then we need to prepare 3 parameters to establish connection to the database. It's just like our previous video concept. Like we need to execute a function called as getConnection, which takes 3 parameters: database URL, username, password. These 3 things. This is the URL, jdbc MySQL, localhost is the IP of our own machine because we are running our databases in our own machine. In case if your database is running in different country or different location, then you need to provide the IP address of that location. Test is the database name, username, password. Alright, now I need to create some variables which are required for me to create connection statement. I need to extract the password from the database. For that reason, I have created one variable called as real password. So once after getting the real password from the database, that value will be stored in real pwd variable. And to create SQL statement, I have created one variable called as SQL. Now, class.forName, the statement, I talked a lot about this statement in my previous video. I hope you have already watched it. Class.forName is used to register the driver, and this is the name of the driver. And I already told you how to add the dependency, how to add the jar file. Those details, I hope you have watched that video, and I hope that you have done plenty of examples, at least one example to work it out this example. Because to work it out JDBC connection, at least 1 or 2 examples you need to practice. Otherwise, just by watching you can't gain any knowledge. You need to put everything into practice. Here is a place where we need to create the connection object. Before you create a connection object, make sure that this class, the driver, is registered. What is exactly happening? Class.forName. ForName is a function. Class.forName, when executed by providing the driver name, a driver is initiated. Its reference name is not required for us. So that's why it is not written like some variable or some pointer variable equals to, like that. The statement is not written. It is directly written as class.forName. It means that it is an anonymous reference is registered in your program that is none other than the driver. And before we establish connection, make sure that this line is executed. Once after you have registered for the driver, you need to create a connection. Connection is created using getConnection, and for that reason we need to use a static class called as driver manager. Driver manager.getConnection takes three parameters: URL, username, password, and create a statement which is used to execute our SQL statements. Statement object. Okay. So all these variables we have already created. Okay. I used a connection class to create a connection CONN variable, statement class for STMT, and these two are simple strings. Right now, I'll use connection method to create a statement. So make sure that you have created a connection object before creating a statement. Once after statement is created, your job is done. We'll start execute our SQL statements using this object STMT. Now we need to prepare our SQL statement. Okay. So what I need to extract, select PWD from login users where name equals to. So what are the name that you provide? Those details will be extracted. I already showed you as part of a database connection. Before I come to this program itself, I told you that there is a table called as login users in our MySQL database. Login user has two fields, username and password. The column name for password is PWD. I'm extracting the password for whatever the name that is provided by the user. This name is a variable in which we have requested our parameter and stored it. Okay. In this line, we have requested the parameter and we stored it. Using that, we are going to extract the password. The password PWD will be kept in a variable called as, this is a place where we are storing our SQL statement. We need to execute this SQL statement. To extract password, the real password, we need to execute this statement. In order to extract data from the database table, in Java, we have a facility called as result set. There is also one more facility called as row set object that we are going to see as part of JSP. Row set object can also be used, which is more advanced than result set. But in this program, I am using result set, and in the next program, that is JSP program, I'll be using row set object. Okay. Acquiring knowledge on these two topics are very, very important. The difference between result set and row set is very, very important. Row sets came later. They are very advanced. Any developer, JTV developer would love to work with row set objects rather than working with result set object. But the job they do is same. What they do is that they extract data from the database. So here I need data from the database. So I've written an SQL query that I wanted to execute. So SQL query is stored in a variable called as SQL and going to execute a function called as execute query. How result set is used, this thing that you can observe in this program. How row set objects can be used, that you will be observing in upcoming JSP program. So here result set is a class for which rs is the object that is created, rs.next. That means we need to execute this function before we use result set. Then only basically the rs points to no record at initial point. Whenever you say rs.next, it starts pointing to the first record. In the first record, what are the value is there that I wanted to extract that value and I wanted to keep in a variable called as real password. For an example, the real password for the user ABC is 1234. 1234 will be extracted by executing this SQL statement, and 1234 will be stored in a variable called as real PWD. So thereafterwards, my job is done. I'll start closing the connections because I need this password, right? Real password I want to know. Whether the user is correctly provided the password or not, I'll check later on. But to check that one, I need original password. Original password is extracted from the database and kept in this variable and close the connections. As soon as your job is done, it's good idea to close the connections. Okay. Once after closing connections, you can start writing your logic. Here I wanted to check the password that is provided by the user is in a variable called as PWD, and the password that I got from the database, that means the original password, is kept in a variable called as real PWD. I'm going to check these two using a method called as equals. This is an inbuilt Java method. Once after this conditioning is tested, in case my condition is true, then what I do is that I'll just forward the request. Okay, I'll just forward the request to which particular page? Welcome page. Welcome.jsp page will to that particular page. What is the response that I acquired will be forwarded. Okay, so these requests, for an example, what are the requests that Checklogin has got? Those requests will be forwarded to welcome.jsp. In case you can also see username in welcome.jsp directly, because if username is ABC, I wanted to show the details of ABC, personal details of ABC in welcome.jsp. So those details will be forwarded as it is, as in the way this program got the parameters. In the same way, welcome.jsp will also get the parameters and we can access them. Using those parameters, we can run SQL internally inside welcome.jsp and we can show the details. For this reason, a request dispatcher is used, and RD is the user-defined reference name that is given for request dispatcher. Before we forward or include, a reference object has to be created and RD is created. And hope one of the previous lessons, request dispatcher, that we have already followed it. And RD is created, rd.forward. Request dispatcher has two methods, forward and include, and whenever the password is correct, I need to forward the request. So rd.forward, two parameters, request and response. So whatever the existing program has got, the same will be forwarded as it is to welcome.jsp. This is the concept. In case if password is incorrect, I'll just throw an error message saying sorry, username or password error, and then I'll again create a request dispatcher RD and then rd.include, I'll say. Okay, you can avoid writing two times this statement by keeping this statement outside of if. Okay, whether your conditioning is correct or not, one time this statement has to be executed. You can keep this statement outside if you want. Okay, which statement means this one. Okay, anyhow you are creating RD, that means request dispatcher. Inside if it is created, inside else is created. Anyhow, if is executed, else is not going to execute, but any one of these two are going to be is going to be executed. That particular statement can be kept outside instead of writing two times. That's fine. So this is what the Checklogin page, Java page. Now once, just imagine if password is correct. In case if password is correct, then what is the place where I'm going to? I'm going to welcome.jsp. This is a simple JSP page. And here, what should I do? You should have a better idea. When this page will be displayed to you, whenever user has provided correct password. For an example, if the username is ABC and password is 123, and the original password, whatever the ABC for the user ABC, if the original password is also 123, just imagine that your program has tested 123 with 123, both are same, then this page has to be displayed. The moment this page is displayed, what has to be done inside this page, you should have an idea. So according to the program that I'm going to explain, what I'm going to do as part of welcome.jsp is that inside welcome.jsp, I'll just send a welcome note to the user. I'll say welcome ABC. ABC is the username, and here are your profile details or personal details. To show the personal details, what I do is that in a variable called as name, I'll just store the name of the person like ABC, because in this program doesn't know the name of the ABC. To do that, request.getParameter method will be executed. I'll just extract the name and I'll store in a variable called as name. Using that name, I'll execute a query, SQL query. It means that even welcome.jsp is going to interact with your database. Okay, I showed the same in the image. Welcome.jsp will be interacting with the database, and there it gets the details, personal details of the user ABC by showing the email address, mobile number of the person. Okay, to do that, the following things are done. And here to display this is a JSP. The major difference between Servlet and JSP already you know. Here the tags, it's a tag based program, and here I'm going to display. So the more HTML has to be used, and less Java is used only for connection purpose and creating statements or row set objects. Less Java is used and more HTML is used. That's why these kind of pages, to develop these kind of pages, it is always necessary to use JSP programming language. Now I'm going to print the username here. Percentile equals to request.getParameter. This username is not stored in any variable. I'm just printing it outside. Okay, using h1 properties, I'm going to print that value, and then I'll say login successful, welcome, your details are below. To get the details from the database, I need to establish the connection and these all things. And here is a place where I'm going to talk something about row set objects. In our previous case, in the Servlet program, I have used result set, but here I'm going to use row set. Row set is more advanced than result set. It's very easy to use row set object because To use row set object, you don't have to create a connection object. You don't have to create a statement. But to use result set, it is mandatory, it is compulsory that you need to create connection object and you need to create statement. But without creating these two, row set object can manage. I mean, it internally manages the connections and statements that are required by giving flexibility to the developer. It is very easy to use. You can just imagine that I have only registered the driver here. These steps are kept in percentile because these are Java statements. Any Java statement that you want to keep in JSP, you need to use percentile tag. All these are demonstrated as part of introduction videos. Class.forename, this statement is asterisk com.mysql cj, the same routine step. And here is a place where I am registering the row set object. To use row set object, jdbc row set impl implementation. Okay, rs is the name that is given to the reference for the row set object. And jdbc row set impl implementation method has to be executed. Upon executing this method, a row set object will be created and its reference is kept in rs. Now, rs object can be used to establish the connection. Okay, by setting the URL, you need to set the URL first of all. Generally, we need to execute get connection method. Get connection method takes three parameters: URL, password, and username password. These three parameters will be taken by get method, get connection method. Here, I'm not going to use get connection method because you don't have to create any connection object. But using row set object, you need to set the URL, username, and password. Using this object, we can directly get into the database. So this object takes using this object, we are going to execute separate methods, one for setting URL, one for giving the username and password. Once after providing these credentials using rs object, that means row set object, now we can directly get into the database to collect whatever the data that we want. And here is a string where I stored the value of the name. This is the name provided by the user from the HTML form. ABC is the name. Okay, so using that name, what I do is that I'll extract all personal details. There is a table called as personal details in the database table. It is one of the tables from where I'll get all the personal details like email, mobile number. I need to store. Okay, so to execute this query, I have stored this query in a variable called as SQL. How do I execute this command? In previous case, I have executed a function called as execute query. But in case of row set object, you need to say set command, rs.set command. So you just pass this SQL value. SQL is a variable in which you have stored this entire query. Instead of maintaining a separate variable, you could also write entire query here in place of SQL variable name. You could also write that entire query. You can pass entire query as an argument. Finally, you should say rs.execute. That's all. And if you clearly observe, the number of steps that I used to establish connection and to get the details are very less when compared to our previous program. So this is a proof that row set objects are much more flexible. They are very flexible when compared to result set. They are also effective. We can also pass the row set object as an argument to any program. That means over a network, we can pass the row set objects and they can be serialized. The more important point is that they can be serialized, but result set objects cannot be serialized. Okay, there are plenty of object advantages with row set object. But remember one point, to extract data from database, either result set has to be used or row set has to be used. There is no other alternative. And row set object is very advanced. These two has to be used only the moment you want data from the database. But if you wanted to execute other commands like create table or insert some values, you cannot use result set or row set in these cases. I hope you got the point. The moment only when you are selecting, if you are retrieving something, then only either result set or row set has to be used. Great. Now it's time to display the details. To display the details, I have taken a table and inside table I have executed a Java statement. That means to execute the Java statement, percentile tag is used. rs.next, it is much more similar to your result set function. Here rs is row set, the same function name, rs.next. That means now your row set object is pointing to the first record, and first record details like name, email ID, mobile number will be printed. And now since it is a loop, now your row set object, it's an automatic iterator, will point to the next record. Second record details will be shown, third record details will be shown, fourth record details will not be shown because my table do not have the fourth record. When our table do not have any records, rs.next the value will become false. You will get out from the loop, you will fall here, and the table will be closed. HTML tag will be closed. You will come out of the program. By displaying the necessary things will stop the execution. Alright, I think that I have explained all the programs that I have used here. It's time to execute the program now. I'll execute my HTML form. All these are deployed, and how to deploy the things in Apache NetBeans was very older video lesson that we have seen. All these things, hopefully, I think that you already know, expecting that you already done these things. Now I'm executing this HTML file. Run file. Now my HTML file will be rendered on a browser by displaying a small form, the place where I need to use name and password. And in my table, there is a user called as Justin. Justin is the user, and password is Beaver. Password is correct. I'll show you the password is correct. Now, upon providing this, whenever I press the submit button, what happens? The credentials will be submitted to the Solid program, which takes Justin and Beaver, and it goes to the database. It checks whether Justin user is there or not. Yes, it is there. And it checks whether the password is Beaver. Yes, Beaver is the password that I've given. It is there. Since the password that I've given is correct, then I'll be redirected to welcome.jsp. In welcome.jsp, for the name Justin, the personal details I'll extract from the database. I'll display it. This is what I'm going to do now. Done. Justin is the username. Login successful. Welcome.jsp page is the place where the request is redirected, but you cannot see that one, okay? Because Checklogin is a program that internally redirected to this particular page. In the URL, you cannot see welcome.jsp, okay? And here are the details: the name, Justin, email ID, and mobile number. These details are extracted from the database. If you want a proof file, just execute my command, and I'll show you within no fraction of time. I'll show you. And this is a test database, and here I need to select star from personal details is the username, table name. I'll just show you the content of this table. Run selection. Okay, look at here. I hope I'll just zoom it. The name is Justin, email ID, password, that means mobile number. All these are shown. Second user is also there, but I want the details of Justin, because Justin is a person who logged in, right? And I should not show the details of Sachin Tendulkar. I need to show the details of Justin Bieber. Got it right? Now, the same example, we'll check it out for unsuccessful kind of thing. So Justin is a username. Password, this time I'm giving ABC, but ABC is a wrong password, right? Whenever the wrong password is given, username or password doesn't exist, and the same registration form has to be shown. Simple login page, but well framed. Now it's time to end up.